Hey yo, football fans, it's another great year. Fantasy football fiends, grab your beer. Giving you the best draft tips for all your picks. Starts and sits to the waiver wire fix. From my drafts galore to stats that's hardcore. Triple F does it all, have y'all screaming more. So sit back, relax, let the experts prevail. JT Magnum, Siggy Guns never fail. What's up, fantasy football fans? My name is JT Magnum along with Siggy Guns, and welcome to Fantasy Football Fiends Stardom Sit-'em Show. And normally we do Stardom Sit-'ems and we also do waiver wire pickups, but obviously it's the first week of fantasy football season and we're not doing the waiver wire pickups just yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our Stardom and Sit-'ems. We're going to do a little bit different this year. Usually we do one Stardom, for a certain, thing or whatever, and then we do our sleeper and then we do our Sit-'em. We're going to do 3 Stardoms. We're going to talk about one each, and from each category: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, and defenses. And then we're going to get into our sleepers. We're going to have 3 sleepers for the week each, and then we'll talk about one of them each. So, and as you see the ticker at the bottom, we're recording this a little earlier. The season hasn't obviously started near yet. This is actually Friday night where we're recording this. So I'm giving you still our top 25 rankings for each player, or for all the players: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, because people are still drafting. So that's what you get to look at the bottom. Next time you see us, which will be week 2, we'll have our fantasy basically our top players for each week, fantasy-wise, for that week. That's how we'll be doing it for the ticker at the bottom. So if you're wondering why it's like that at the bottom, it's not for this week coming up. It's how it overall for people still drafting. So let's go right into Stardoms. Siggy, who's your 3 Stardoms this week for quarterbacks?
All right, so a lot of people would pick the obvious, starting quarterbacks, but I like to go a little bit to where some people probably have a real struggle, like maybe some lower tier quarterbacks if they pass it, so I'm going to go by that. So the 3 quarterbacks I picked was Russell Wilson, Nick Foles, and Tom Brady. And I'll go ahead and talk about Tom Brady right away. I'm shocked that this year, fantasy-wise, people have been drafting him 9, 10, 11. He's probably your backup in some cases. And this is a guy that I know his receivers had problems last year. He had problems last year. It is crazy. This guy's still throwing 4,500 yards. He's still going to have almost 30 touchdowns. And I actually think this year his offense is going to be even better. For some reason, I don't know what it is. I just got a feeling he's going to be lighting it up again. And he's playing Miami. He always does good against Miami. And I think he's going to have a real good day. He's going to prove everybody wrong.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. It's just that I think it's with the whole, not having that many receiver things. But I know he's got Edelman back. Amendola is iffy with all the concussion problems. And he's got – I do like Brian LaFell a lot. Or what's his name? Yeah, Brian LaFell. But it's just a little bit question marks with the receivers, I guess, and his offensive line. And they did just trade Logan Mankins away. So it's like that's the question marks, but he's still Brady.
he's still Brady. And that's still,
the guy's a winner.
That's still the Patriots offense. I mean, it's not like they're struggling. Yeah. I mean, they're still going to get 35 points a game.
Exactly. Well, my 3 quarterbacks are Tony Romo, Colin Kaepernick, who are in the same game together, and Jay Cutler. I actually think it's going to be a shootout between Dallas and San Francisco this week, given the news of Aldon Smith suspended 9 games, so he's not going to be chasing Tony Romo this week, and we'll get into that later. But I'm going to talk about Tony Romo this week. He's playing against the 49er defense that's a little bit, minus, like I said, minus Aldon Smith. Glenn Dorsey's hurt up front. I don't think Dallas is going to run the ball a lot, but I see them passing a lot, especially with the 49ers corners. They're a little suspect this year. Antoine Bethea is coming back from a concussion. It's his first year on the team. Eric Reed is a solid safety back there, but with Tremaine Brock and Chris Culliver, basically on the outside, you don't really know what they got. I just think it's going to be a big day for Romo. I mean, back when San Fran's defense was good, Romo still threw for 300 yards against him with broken ribs. So I have a feeling that Romo's actually going to have a pretty good game because they're going to have a hard time running the ball against the 49ers anyways, so I see them passing a lot. So look for Romo actually to be a pretty much one of the main starts this week, and actually look for Kaepernick as well because Dallas's defense sucks. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Tony Romo's my dude this week. Even though I'm a 49er fan, I hate to say that, but he's gonna put up some points.
That's hilarious because I have him on my sit list.
This is awesome. This is gonna be a great year in fantasy football for you and I. So who you got for your running backs?
Oh, for my running backs for stardoms?
Yeah.
All right, for stardoms we have Reggie Bush, we got Chris Johnson, and Alfred Morris. And I'll go ahead and talk about Chris Johnson. You know, obviously the Jets, I talked about it in some of our sleeper shows and stuff like that. The Jets run the ball a lot. And then one thing they haven't had in a long time is that guy that you can count on for 3 downs, and Chris Johnson is going to be the type of guy. He might not get it right away as far as, you know, carrying the load all the time because they still got Chris Ivory and stuff like that. But eventually they're just going to have to realize that this guy is the man, and obviously they're going to be using him in the goal line. And at home against the Raiders, I just have a feeling that Chris Johnson is going to go nuts, and he's going to at least have, in my opinion, 110 yards rushing and possibly 2 scores on the ground. And I'm going to make a bold prediction that he's going to have one of the better point-wise running backs games of week 1.
Yeah, I have him actually on my list as well. For my running backs, I have Frank Gore, Chris Johnson, and C.J. Spiller going against the Bears. And I really like C.J. Spiller this year a lot if he could stay healthy. The guy, when he's healthy, he can run the ball very well. He can catch the ball and take off. The guy is just a phenomenal athlete. But I'm going to talk about Chris Johnson as well. He's going against the Raiders. And he was the guy, I had this week thinking to myself, he's going to go off. Even if he didn't start, he's going to go off. Yep. He's just that type of dude, and the Raiders just don't have the defense I believe, to stop that. Now with the Jets' offensive line, they can run block. So, and I actually have we're going to talk about the Jets probably a lot today because the Raiders, to me, just don't have the defense to be able to stop them this week. I think the Jets are going to score a lot of points this week, actually.
We'll see. I hope so, obviously, because I'm a Jets fan. But
yeah.
Definitely, I think they're going to be, driving it down the field, and Chris Johnson would actually benefit from that this year, unlike he did in Tennessee last year.
Yeah, and they probably use him on the goal line finally too. So we'll see.
Exactly.
What's who's your wide receivers?
My starting wide receivers, I got Larry Fitzgerald, Victor Cruz, and T.Y. Hilton. And I'll talk about Victor Cruz. I know we were down on him for, most of the time. We think he's going to have a bad fantasy season. But the one thing I know about the Lions is that their defense, while they might get some names, when they play in that stadium, for some reason, everybody goes nuts. The games are always out of control. And I just think that Eli Manning and Victor Cruz, they've been hearing it a lot all preseason long, how the Giants' offense just looks pathetic. And I got a feeling that there's no better way to get out of that than playing the Lions at their place. And I can see this being a shootout, and I think Victor Cruz will have a big game.
Yeah, I have Pierre Garçon, Dez Bryant, and Michael Crabtree. And I'm going to talk about Dez Bryant. It's like I said, San Francisco's corners are a little suspect this week. And I just the way I've seen it in preseason, it just seems like they might have a little bit more time to throw, being that Aldon Smith isn't rushing the passer. They have guys on the outside that can rush the passer, but they're not Aldon Smith. So I have a feeling Tony Romo is just going to have some time back there to find him. And Dez Bryant is just one of those guys that might give the 49ers some fits. So I look for him to have a big week this week along with Crabtree. Like I said, I think it's going to be a shootout.
Nah, I can see it. I actually think the 49ers are going to whoop the Cowboys, but
we'll see. I think the 49ers are going to win as well, but I just think it's going to be a little bit high scoring than what people think it is going to be. So who do you have for tight ends?
Tight ends, I have Vernon Davis, and obviously we've been talking about this Cowboy 49er game for a little bit there. Dennis Pitta and Zach Ertz, and I'll talk about Pitta because I actually think that the Ravens are going to be struggling against the Bengals this week. I have a feeling that they're going to have to come from behind. Obviously, whenever you have a team that's down, they're not going to be running the ball. They're going to have to be throwing it. The Bengals' front is so good that Flacco's not going to have time to be going downfield for a Torrey Smith, etc. So I see Pitta just having a big day. And for tight ends, especially if you have a points per reception, I got a feeling he might even get 7 to 10 catches, maybe a score, and close to 100 yards. So I think he's going to be a pretty much a sleeper tight end for a number one type of day. So I would definitely roll with him week 1.
Yeah, I have actually 2 on my list from your list. I have Antonio Gates, Zach Ertz, and Dennis Pitta. And I'll talk about Antonio Gates. The reason why I think he's going to have a great game this week is, he's always pretty much going to have a great game. He's got Phillip Rivers shooting to him, throwing the ball to him. They're playing the Cardinals. The Cardinals usually stop tight ends, but Darrell Washington's not on the Cardinals this year. He's gone for the year. And he was the main guy. For some reason, that dude could stop tight ends. Like any tight end he covered just usually had a bad game, unless his name was Vernon Davis. But for some reason, he just shuts down tight ends, and he's not there. So look for Antonio Gates and Ladarius Green to probably have a good game for San Diego. But Antonio Gates is the main guy, obviously. So I think he's going to get a couple touchdowns this week. Who's your top defenses for stardoms?
I have Carolina, Kansas City, and St. Louis. Now, obviously, some of these defenses are ranked pretty high. I think the Panthers is right up there. The St. Louis defense, I'll go ahead and talk about that one. They're playing at home. They've been actually pretty good all season or preseason, the defense. They might not have Bradford anymore, but the Vikings quarterback situation is still, up. You don't know what you're going to have.
Sorry.
They're coming off of a bad season. I think the Vikings are going to struggle, and I don't know if everybody's going to know what to do. So coming into a good defensive team like the Rams, and their place just has Rams, destroying them defensively written all over it. Even Adrian Peterson, I don't think is going to be able to do. A lot of fantasy leagues set up to where shutouts you get bonus points. So I think the Rams defense is going to be your top defense this week.
All right. And my top defenses, I have the Chiefs as well, the Bears, and the Jets. And I have the Bears in there because the Bills look a little inept at offense, and I don't know what's going on with them. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chiefs. They're playing the Titans. We've been talking about the Titans, how we don't really know about their wide receivers. We don't really know anything. The only thing we do know is that Bishop Sankey might be a top running back for them this year. But given that, the Chiefs usually play the run very well. So I like them this week, especially at home with that good special teams, with that solid defense. And Jake Locker's like a little bit questionable still, and he can throw some picks. So and Kansas City returns a lot of interceptions for touchdowns. So I like their defense a lot this week, and I think that's a must start defense this week. So let's talk about some sit-ems now. Who's your quarterback sit-ems for the week? I'm dying to hear these.
Ryan Tannehill, Joe Flacco, and Tony Romo. Look at that. Now, I would love to talk about Romo. Actually, you know what? I might as well talk about Romo because you have him as your starter, and I'm going to tell you why I would sit him. He has been off ever since his back surgery in preseason. Now, I know the media already bashes him enough. Now, granted, he does do good at home, and you're right about him doing good against the 49ers in the past. But I just have a feeling that his timing is just a little off, and I think that's going to be a bad thing in a game against the 49ers, who want to establish themselves as still, a premium team, because a lot of people are starting to doubt the 49ers now all of a sudden. And I just think the Cowboys are going to be struggling. I do think you're right. I do agree with you. They're going to be probably playing from behind, so they're not going to run the ball much. But I just don't see Romo having a really good day. I can see him only throwing 225 yards and maybe a touchdown and 2, which would still be good fantasy-wise. But you want Tony Romo to be the 303, 2 to 3 touchdowns all the time. So I got a feeling that his first week he's going to try to get, his bearings back, and I wouldn't have started him if I had him.
You're gonna laugh at who my sit-ems are. My sit-ems this week are going to be some people that drafted these dudes. 2 of the dudes are definitely top draft picks. Aaron Rodgers, Eli Manning, and Cam Newton. And you know why I'm sitting Aaron Rodgers. LOB. They're playing Seattle, in Seattle, with that defense. Yeah. And Aaron Rodgers, he's going to struggle. He's gonna struggle this week. If he does throw a couple touchdowns, that's great. But they need Eddie Lacy this week. They don't need Aaron Rodgers this week. They need Eddie Lacy to have a good game. Eli Manning, he just looks so horrible in the preseason, and that offensive line just looks like they will not block for him. And given Detroit's pass rush, it's just a scary thing to see. You know, with Detroit coming at him, especially Ndamukong Suh and all them coming at him. And I just think he's going to struggle this week. But I'm going to talk about Cam Newton. He's got no receivers. He's got like no receivers basically. He's got the rookie. I know. And Buccaneers defense is going to be one of those much improved defenses. That's what scares me this week is because they're at home, they're on the road, and they got to play a Buccaneers defense who actually looks good this preseason. And I don't think that with having basically just the rookie Calvin Benjamin, that's it at wide receiver. I don't really think they have anybody else that's even notable to be on a fantasy or I mean, do you who does Carolina have? I don't even know who their receivers are.
Greg Olsen is the only one that I would trust at this point.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, and so I think he's going to struggle this week, and that's why I'm putting him as a sit-em because it's just I don't see it. But moving on to the running backs, who's your sit-em running backs? I'm dying to hear these ones too.
Eddie Lacy, Ben Tate, and Doug Martin. And I'll go ahead and talk about Eddie Lacy. Now, I agree. The LOB, that's the main reason why. Now, they're playing in Seattle, who, when they're at home, they hardly give up points, let alone, touchdowns or field goals. It's always a game where normally if the opposing team scores, they're only getting 14 points to 21 at the most. Now, Aaron Rodgers, like I said, is going to be the gunslinger. If they don't establish the run early, they're going to have to be throwing it the rest of the way to try to catch up to the Seahawks, which I think their offense this year so far in preseason has looked awesome. I mean, phenomenal. So the same reasons why you think the running game is going to work for the Cowboys game against 49ers, I think the same with the Packers. And I just think Eddie Lacy, being the number 5 overall pick in most fantasy drafts, is going to have a pretty good week this week.
Yeah, I just think they're going to use him a lot. I don't know how he's going to do because Seattle's defense they're good. They're good. And so I think they're going to use him a lot. I just don't know how well he's going to do. But they need him this week because Aaron Rodgers, if they don't run the ball well this week, they are not going to pass the ball well this week. Not against that team. So we'll see what happens.
But it's not like you're not going to tell Aaron Rodgers, "Hey, don't throw anymore." I mean, that's not going to happen.
I know, but you got to pick your poison with Seattle though because they make you kind of play their way.
Let's just look at here let's stick with this game real quick. The Super Bowl, Peyton Manning had no choice but to throw. They couldn't rely on Knowsham Moreno in the Super Bowl at that point.
Yeah. And they got behind fast.
That's true, and that's what I think might happen in this game.
Yeah, I see it too, but Packers defense isn't that bad either. But it's just I don't know, man. They're gonna have to run the ball. If they want to do anything, they're gonna have to run the ball this week. So
are thirsty.
But I don't think that Eddie Lacy's going to have a great game either. So I don't think that Green Bay is going to have a great game this week at all.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But I mean they always play tough when they play each other. So let's see what happens. But if Green Bay wants to win, they got to run that ball.
What a great first game though. It's going to be an awesome first game. I can't wait.
Yeah, so that brings me to my running back sits, and that's I also have Doug Martin, Le'Veon Bell, and Bernard Pierce. So I'm going to talk about Bernard Pierce. The reason why I'm sitting him, Ray Rice is out, obviously, for the first 2 games, and he's starting for the Ravens, but they're playing the Bengals. The Bengals stuff the run. You can't run on the Bengals. So that's that's really not much to say. They were one of the top teams last year against the run. So, minus the fact that you have no Ray Rice and you're only running Ben Pearson or Bernard Pierce and whoever else they have, it's not going to happen for them this week. So that's why he's definitely a must sit. And he's getting picked up early by a lot of teams. By a lot of people that think that he's going to have this phenomenal season when Ray Rice is still on that team.
Yeah, and I don't see. I actually think the people that gambled on Ray Rice are gonna like it in the end.
Yeah. So who's your wide receiver starters or Stidhams? I'm sorry.
My sits on that: Vincent Jackson, Mike Wallace, and Jordy Nelson. And I'll go ahead and talk. Obviously, we've covered the LOB, so Jordy Nelson. That's the reason why they're. And as far as Mike Wallace goes, New England's defense has looked real good in preseason. I just think that also with the addition of my ex-boy Darrelle Revis, he's going to be all over Mike Wallace. So Mike Wallace is going to do nothing. So Vincent Jackson would be the only other person to talk about, I guess. And the Panthers' defense has been just great. And I think, Josh McCown, like I said, we talked about him being a distributor. He's going to go ahead and realize that against this defense, he's going to have to throw a lot to the tight end, whoever it is now, since they traded the other one away. And look, probably the rookie Mike Evans will probably have a pretty good game. But in the end, I don't see them doing much in this game for this week against the Carolina Panthers defense. So Vincent Jackson, like I said, is going to have a monster year, I think. He's going to have a real good season. But this first week, he's going to have a bad one.
Yeah, I can see that as well. My wide receivers, two of the same again: Jordy Nelson, Torrey Smith, and Mike Wallace. And we'll talk about Mike Wallace, Revis Island. he's gonna be on Revis Island this week, and it's gonna be a hard day for him all day long, especially with the way New England plays defense. That's why I think that Revis has gone to the perfect team for him, because they'll allow him to be able to play the way he likes to play, not putting him out there in zone coverage and things that he's not used to. They'll let him play his way while they play their way on the opposite side. And you all know that when Revis plays man, the dude is he's all over you. I mean, he can cover better than, I think he's one. To me, I still think he's the best cover corner in the NFL, period. Hands down. When it comes to actual man coverage, Revis is the man. When it comes to zone coverage, he looks lost. He looks a little bit lost in zone coverage. But when it's just him and somebody else, you can pretty much count on him to be right in front of the guy. Even if the guy makes a catch, it's usually a tough catch. So I look for Mike Wallace to have. I mean, I know he's going to have a pretty good season this year, but not this week. not going on Revis Island. So who's your sit-em tight ends?
My sit-em tight ends, I have Heath Bell, Charles Clay, and Kyle Rudolph. And I'll go ahead and talk about Charles Clay. We talked about the Revis Island and all that stuff, but like I said, the Patriots defense is just looking real good. They had this young squad for a couple of years now, and it looks like they're all starting to be healthy and putting it together. And that's the scary part about the Patriots. They've always had the offense. They just needed a defense. And I just think that this defense so far, from what I've seen in the first unit, is just looking awesome. They're forcing turnovers, and they're not letting anybody catch it. And obviously, if the Dolphins are struggling offensively, then the whole team is going to be in disarray. So Charles Clay has been like a tight end that everybody's starting to, realize that he was good because, Tannehill's actually throwing him a lot. I don't think he'll be able to have him as a safety blanket this week.
Yeah, I have, from my three, I have Jason Witten, Delaney Walker, and Vernon Davis. And the reason why I think Vernon Davis is going to have a bad game is not because the Dallas defense sucks and this and that, but it's because San Francisco's offensive line, without Alex Boone, they're gonna rely on Vernon Davis to block a little bit more. So he's not gonna get out as much. We have Vance McDonald, who can run but struggles a little bit in the pass blocking. So Vernon Davis has been known in the past to stay in and block. If we have another tight end that can go out, then usually that's what they do. He stays in the block while that happens. And I have a feeling it's going to be one of those games where they run the ball a lot with Frank Gore and Carlos Hyde, and Vernon Davis is going to be the benefit of that because he's the one who's going to be blocking a lot. He's going to stay in the block. They're going to try some shots with him, I know it, but probably not as much as years past in the first game, given the fact that Alex Boone is out. So. And, I mean, I know you never know because Dallas' defense is just it's not the greatest, but I just have a feeling that he's going to be staying this week in the block a lot because it looks like that 49ers offensive line needs him in there, the extra to block. Well, who's your sit-em defenses?
The Miami Dolphins, the Indianapolis Colts, and the New York Giants. And I'll go and talk about the Giants. That Giants defense has looked awful also. And I talked about that. The Lions offense, obviously is not going to go anywhere, and they're playing at home. This is going to be one of the – I think it's going to be a shootout. I really do. I really do think it's going to be a shootout. And that's just – obviously that doesn't go well for both defenses. So yeah, that Giants defense looks just as bad as the Cowboys so far.
Yeah, my defenses this week to sit them are the 49ers, Packers, and Broncos. And Broncos playing the Colts, of course, so that's going to probably end up being a little bit of a shootout as well.
Yep.
But let's talk about the Packers. They're playing in Seattle, and I know the Packers are a decent team. They're going to be decent all year long for the rest of the year, but in Seattle with Marshawn Lynch running the ball and Russell Wilson just looking amazing in preseason. I mean, I don't even think he didn't have a drive that didn't score this year. Like the guy just he's phenomenal. He's a good quarterback. He's smart. He doesn't make mistakes, and I think the Packers are going to suffer this week. If this game was in Green Bay, I think a little bit differently, but since it's in Seattle, I just think the Packers are just going to struggle. So don't start them this week. Now let's talk about sleepers. And first of all, these startums and situms, when we're doing these startums and situms, we try not to talk about the big name guys too much, just to let you guys know, because I know a lot of people say, well, why come you didn't say start Calvin Johnson? Well, because you always start Calvin Johnson. That's just a given. If he's going against Revis, then maybe I'll put him as a situm, but you got to start your main guys always. You got to, you'll never see start Peyton Manning, because obviously you always start Peyton Manning. So the obvious choices we try to put on there, but there's sometimes where we'll put, Des Bryant. I said Des Bryant earlier, but obviously he's an obvious choice, but I really think he's going to have an amazing game this week. But we try to put guys that normally you might have on your bench or you're not sure of, or you might have a guy that's on there that you might not start over a certain one, but maybe this guy will do better this week over a different player. So that's why we say what we say. So who's your three sleeper? Oh, go ahead.
And when we do say a big name, we usually try to pick him on the sit-em side, because we want you to not be afraid to bench some of the bigger stars, because they might have a bad one. I mean, obviously, let's say Drew Brees, he's always going to kick ass, but if he plays the Carolina Panthers, it seems like that's his kryptonite all the time. So
yeah,
you gotta pick your poison sometimes. You gotta realize that maybe that Andy Dalton you have on the bench is gonna be the better option. Yep. So don't be afraid to do it.
Yep, exactly. So with that being said, who's your sleepers?
My sleepers this week are gonna be Trent Richardson, DeAndre Hopkins, and Phillip Rivers. And I'll go ahead and talk about Phillip Rivers. Obviously, he had a great season last year, and even with that great season, I'm still shocked that it seemed like everybody forgot. He was drafted at an average of 15 quarterback or something like that. I was absolutely shocked to see some of these drafts that I was doing, these mock drafts, and have names like Johnny Manziel go ahead of him. And I'm like, did they just forget that he had this great season last year? And it's not like it's going to just all of a sudden disappear. This actually is one of the teams that he actually has good receivers. Yes, he had Vincent Jackson in the past and Antonio Gates, but now it just seems like the whole core overall is awesome. So he's still, it's not like quarterbacks go decline. You still got old quarterbacks out there that are doing good. So I think he's going to be poised for a great game, even against the Cardinals at their place, because he always is somebody that has the gunslinger mentality also. So I think he's going to have a great game against the Cardinals.
Yeah, my three sleepers are last year's basically sleeper, Riley Cooper, Mark Ingram, and your boy Geno Smith. And let's talk about Mark Ingram. He's been tearing it up preseason. He looks like his old Alabama self running the ball for New Orleans, and I think that he is, for some reason, he is going to have. I know Drew Brees throws the ball out a lot. I get it. It's a pass-based offense, but they look like they want to run this year. And I have a feeling that Mark Ingram is going to be the benefactor from that. And this week going against the Falcons, that's their rival, and the Falcons last year they weren't so great on defense, and they don't look so great on defense this year as it is already, and especially up front on that line. So I think they're going to get pushed around a lot this week, and I have a feeling that Mark Ingram's going to get 100 yards and a couple touchdowns this week. He might even get some passing because they run screens with him too. So I know that Pierre Thomas is there, and they do stuff with him too as well, but I just think that Mark Ingram, it just seems like they're featuring him a lot this year. So
Yeah, they are. I think also what helps is the fact that Darren Sproles isn't there anymore. So
yeah,
now it's
yeah,
almost like they have no choice but to use him this time because they always seem to want to use Sproles more than they should have.
yeah. And well, now this year's version of Sproles for them is Brandon Cooks, who's their speed
Yeah,
guy now, but he's a wide receiver. He's not really a running back type of guy, and he's a lot small. Like, he's a
exactly.
very small dude, but he can fly. But
Yeah,
it just seems like they're trying to be hard-nosed football as well as to add to that passing game, because you already know they could pass. But if they can run the ball now too, and especially hard the way Mark Ingram's running, I just have a feeling he's gonna have a good year this year. And he's actually a sleeper running back. I would tell people all the time, if he drops in the draft and you see him down there and you get a chance to pick him up, grab him, because I think he's gonna have
there's some
a
drafts where he's not
1,000-yard
even being
season.
picked.
Yeah, like it's crazy that he can be just sitting there. He's one of the guys on my
Yeah,
radar. Like I'm thinking about, if I see him, I'm gonna grab him.
yeah, I can,
So that wraps up the top or stardom situms and our sleepers for the week. Stay tuned next week. We'll have, we'll do the same thing, but we'll do waiver wire pickups as well, because obviously next week we'll start the season. The players will have everything all set and everything. We'll be able to tell you who to pick up next week and who to grab and who to play. So for JT Magnum and Siggy Guns, you want to say anything before we take off?
No, just I can't wait for the season to start already. It's
Oh yeah, me
finally
too,
here.
man. I'm excited. I hope you fantasy
Finally.
football fans are excited, because I know I'm excited. Oh, let me show the ring. Where's that sucker?
Oh yeah, yeah. You gotta show everybody the
This
ring.
was last year's championship ring from I don't know if they can see it, but you can barely see it.
NFL.com.
But, yeah, NFL.com. That's where Siggy and I did the. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Siggy and I did it. It says JT Magnum 15-1 champs. I had a phenomenal season last year, apparently. So
Nice.
that's it. So I hope you guys like the show. Don't forget to put a like, share it on whatever you want to, Facebook or Google Plus or whatever. I had some people, some nice people picked up our video and shared it on their fantasy sites. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. And that's it.
Yes,
So for Siggy Guns and JT Magnum, we out. Peace. Enjoy the football.
Peace.
Enjoy the football week.